Hey, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. He's Aaron William Freeland. Thank you for joining us. All right. It's a big week, Aaron. A lot of excitement. The Canadian teams are doing well in a lot of fronts. And most importantly, the Canadian national soccer team is doing really well.
No, very happy to see that for them, especially with the results that were expected coming into this World Cup. Glad to see them get their first points with a draw, and then even more points with that massive victory over Qatar.
Absolutely. I guess, let me see here. All right. I'm good. I guess I think the important thing for us, I guess, as sports fans and as Canadian sports fans, is the progress that football, European football or soccer, has made.
Oh, most definitely. It's growing by leaps and bounds. You can see that every year. Not necessarily in TFC's gate, but certainly in the fever that's gone on around the World Cup, especially when it comes to the games that are being hosted in Canada. And the fact that we saw Canada once in Toronto and twice in Vancouver, I think, and that's really it.
And that's where they're going to play because of them getting in the position they've gotten themselves into advancing. So BC is going to be enjoying the support of the Canadian team, and that'll be awesome. Now, another team that deserves a lot of support, they may not represent Canada, but they do have a maple leaf on their chest, and it's not the one that says Toronto on it, the way the one that we're talking about does. This is the Marley team. They ended up winning a championship.
Yep. So for the second time in their 21-year history, the Marlies managed to bring home the Calder Cup. This was their third trip to the finals. Their first was in 2012, which did not end well. They ended up losing on a goal that was offside and off the glass and uncalled by the AHL. They won in 2018 against the Texas Stars, and then they won again Friday night versus the Chicago Wolves, AHL affiliate of the Carolina Hurricanes, in a dramatic 4-3 win to take the series in 5 games at home. Artur Zaktiamov was the winning goalie. He had a record of 16-3 and a .928 save percentage going through the playoffs here. Vinny Lacheri was one of the leading scorers for the AHL in those playoffs. Logan Shaw finished with 17 points in 24 games. William Villeneuve led all AHL defensemen in playoff scoring with 23 points. And that's 4 points more than the entire Leafs blue line combined in their 2024-2025 playoffs. And, the energy line that they had of Michael Pezzetta, Landon Simmons, Mark Johnstone brought a level of physicality and much-needed juice that I don't think I've seen on the Leafs in over a half a decade. So, fantastic to see John Gruden getting the boys there all the way through it. Interesting to note, they used a 1-1-3 neutral zone system, which is very similar to the one that Tim Hiller used with the Los Angeles Kings. So if Hiller decides to bring his coaching style from LA to Toronto, the players that are coming up through the Marlies will already have been exposed to this, and they'll know what to expect.
One of the things that I think also, it's not just a system, and you bring up Hiller, and one of the things he talked about is spirit. In lacrosse, it's a different thing. It's, it's the maker's game, the creator's game, sorry. And in this case, spirit is a willingness to go all out without holding back and doing it together. So it doesn't speak to the system per se, but it does speak to the application and the trying of the people who are, applying the system. So what looked like to me with the Marlies is they were a team that it didn't matter which line was out there, Aaron. I think I saw the same thing. I saw the same plan. I saw the same aggressiveness. I saw the same opportunistic nature. And, that speaks less about talent, more about desire. And we've had the conversation many times. And the Leafs right now are having themselves a conversation. I don't know if it's with themselves or with others. There's been talk that it's been with others, but the conversation has been talent or desire, something that Matthew Nyes has a lot of both.
No, and definitely the amount of buy-in that you saw from these Marlies players when it came to that sort of thing speaks to their competitive nature and their fighting spirit. There was no point during these 5 games the Marlies looked in any way out of it, and the amount of uh, I guess not recklessness, but wherewithal with which they played was kind of inspiring. Nylander finished with 7 points, 6 of them being goals in this final season, this final series. They won because their stars delivered, their role players mattered, and their entire roster bought into something bigger than themselves. I was watching their presser today from Real Sports, and they kept coming back to the theme of everybody's a family here. Everybody works for each other. We support each other. We lift each other up. And certainly that was something that carried the team all the way through a bit of a rough preseason and through a bumpy start to the year, but certainly was something that they finished well on. So I was grateful to see that.
And once you capture lightning in a bottle, you try to contain it and keep it running. And they did do that. They got on a roll and stayed on it. And it's not easy by any stretch, but sometimes finding the roll is the hardest thing to do. And that's why teams get eliminated in the first round. And the teams that figure out a way to win, even the close ones, which is what they did, in this playoff. Remember, they struggled to win the first 2 series. They weren't locks in winning the series. They did just enough to win the series, and that's how you win championships. You play well enough to win.
Exactly. And I know you mentioned Nyes in your earlier comments here, and I think we're getting to a point just before a silly season where it's important that the Maple Leafs ask themselves a serious question about Matthew Nyes and his role with the Maple Leafs. Because as it currently stands, there's lots of trades that are being put together by analysts and talking heads. No one is doubting that Nyes could get traded this summer. The question that actually really needs to be asked is why? Like, why are the Maple Leafs considering trading Nyes away? It's a much harder question to answer, and one that doesn't seem totally clear in digging through all the information that's out there. I mean, obviously, Toronto wants to upgrade its defensive group, but they just figured out a sign and trade for Darren Radish. That's probably the biggest swing they'll take in that direction. Now, the Leafs fans are going to need to wait and see what comes of a potential Morgan Rielly trade. If Rielly was traded for a forward, could Nyes then be traded for a defenseman? I mean, that would certainly balance things out, but it's not necessarily a given, right? I mean, you get rid of Nyes, and you get rid of a major dog in your lineup. You get rid of a guy that's willing to go into the corners, get his nose dirty, take a glove in the face in front. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to realistically to trade him at this point. I know one of your favorite topics recently has been to trade Matthews, and I certainly agree in that regard. It makes more sense because you can clear up even more cap space. Right now the Leafs are sitting with $18.5 million in cap space. They're pretty well situated, but being able to give themselves $31 million worth of cap space would be even better.
I have a simple reason why Nyes is, his status with the Leafs is questionable and trading him is an option. And talked about, it's because it is an option. It's something that isn't an option for everybody else on the team. How many players of his quality that rise to his quality have no trade or no movement in their contracts? That's a very rare thing. I think if you're the general manager of the Leafs, you're saying to yourself, actually, this goes through both, right? Because this isn't something that started with the previous general manager and ended with this one. It's continued. It's been a constant drumbeat. But I think it has more or less the logic is he can be traded, so let's talk about it. He's a good distraction from everything else so that the conversations about everything else doesn't happen. But I do believe that Matthews should be traded. But the reason I say he must be traded is if they can't renew his contract. That's one condition right away. It would cause me to think, if I was a general manager of the Maple Leafs, whether I want this guy. If he doesn't sign on now at this point and he doesn't re-sign. They should trade him. And you know what? It's just because they have to have learned a lesson from Marner. It's not something that now they can claim ignorance. You can't hang on to the guy and then lose him for nothing and not look stupid. It doesn't matter whether it happened in a previous general manager's control or this one. It's the same problem, and the organization needs to have people and players on their team that are demanding to remain, not because they say so, but they perform actions that speak to that. And we all know that now the Leafs have more pressure on them because Tkachuk of Ottawa is now Tkachuk of 2 in Florida. So for me, Aaron, that's the only reason why I say trade Matthews, because he's too key a piece, too big an asset to be going down to the end of a contract at his age. Yep.
That's true. And with 2 years left on his contract, it's better to try to lock him in now after they've done everything they can to walk him to free agency,
Right. Well, this is something they have to do, and the lesson is out there. Multiple players, Marner's not the only one, have left their teams. We don't speak about the player in Edmonton that I think was the best player on the Canes and played all the key moments and scored some key goals that led to a Stanley Cup for them. So, we're getting to the basketball mentality, the NBA mentality, not basketball. The NBA mentality where players are determining where they should go and in essence, pick who wins the championship by virtue of where they go because they have the freedom to do so. So there's crazy stuff going on right now, that's for sure.
And you know what? I can appreciate the fact that players want to play where they want to play. And I'm more than happy to see teams do that. The one thing I'm grateful about is the fact that there's a salary cap so that you don't get super teams. And you'd be definitely in that situation, and smaller markets would definitely suffer if players were just allowed to determine where they would go willy-nilly. So
can't disagree with you. So the Leafs make a big move. We just finished talking about players wanting to go somewhere. And we'll start with the last comment that I would have made to this. I'll start with it. And that is Radish, after getting signed and traded to Toronto, posts on, I think it was it Twitter or X? And
I think it was X.
I think he showed a picture of McDavid and said, "When are you coming?"
Yeah, I remember seeing that. And again, certainly it's one of those things that sort of reconfirms Toronto's spot where aging NHL players go to finish out their careers. We've gotten a lot of players over the years that are on the downside of their careers, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't always help.
No, and this, I like the trade, and honestly, the reason I like the trade is that you've got a defenseman, right-hand shooting, that can really shoot the puck. And I don't think the last time they had somebody that could shoot the puck like Radish does was McCabe. So that's a wee bit of a time ago, right? And we definitely haven't had here in Toronto. The Maple Leafs have not had this kind of scoring defenseman, at least statistically in his history. I know Riley comes close, but Riley has not been, he hasn't risen to that level ever. And the amount of goals that Radish has scored from the back end, he's probably scored more goals from the back end last year than the Leaf defensemen have scored the past 3 or 4 altogether.
And, for picking up his 8-year, $8.5 million contract, Toronto sent a 5th-round pick back their way. So I'm not entirely displeased with that. I understand the mechanics of the deal. We're basically taking on his salary for Tampa Bay. And you know what? He still fits under the cap, so I'm not all that really concerned about it at this point. If it pays off, it pays off. If it doesn't, I'm not really going to lose too much sleep over it. I mean, his contract as it currently stands is a full no move. Cannot be sent to the minors, or unless he's put through on waived without player approval, and he's under contract all the way until 2034. That's not a bad thing. Having him cost controlled like that, as the cap is going to continue to rise, certainly benefits the Leafs.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy they really need and haven't had for years, if at all. I'd go back to Ian Turnbull before I start talking about somebody on the defensive side that can score. So that's a wee bit of time ago. So Radish joins the Maple Leafs. He opens an invitation to McDavid. So what could the Leafs get for Riley? Well, a 5th-round draft choice was Tampa's poison, but I that was, I find that amazing that they only got a 5th. I would have expected a little more. So it makes the fact that they only gave up a 5th, Aaron, to conclude, makes that salary even better. I mean, a 5th-round draft pick to end up with a player like that when you're on balance talking about, what's in your lineup. If you look at what Ottawa did, they gave up a guy. They got nothing for him except draft picks, which are awesome. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot you can do with draft picks. But, a warm body is always something that, in the lineup you want. But because those picks are so good this year, they can get a decent player. I wonder if the Leafs would be interested in taking a few of those first rounders off their head. I don't know.
You never know. And I mean, realistically speaking, they went from having just $4.6 million worth of cap space to 13.1. So that's a bonus for them in that regard as well.
Absolutely. And, he's had trouble being healthy. His style of play doesn't only hurt others, it hurts himself as well. That's another thing to remember with, players that are very physical. There's you pay is sometimes almost as much as you charge, if you will.
No, for sure. And again, the other thing with the Radish contract is, and even with Riley's contract, if we are looking to move off from someone like that with a no move, you can certainly sweeten the pot by offering to retain. And with the Leafs now having $18.795 million in cap space, that certainly gives them a few more options as well.
Yeah, but I would go with if they would take his contract, and give him a flyer of a player who may or may not be a really good player, maybe a young defenseman, I'd go with that. They don't need to get. I don't. In this case, honestly, Aaron, if our feeling, and I'm saying our feeling, I shouldn't do that. I'll say in my feeling, the value of Riley has dropped since he signed this contract. And for a player whose value has dropped to the point his has, the fact that they're willing to take his salary on is a gift in itself. And that's something that if the Leafs can jettison this contract and him and maybe end up with a young player, I don't know how well they'll do. But I got to tell you, it'll be interesting because one thing this Chayka regime here that they're performing, there's some interesting moves they're making, and the cost of them isn't as high as I would think. Now, is this just he's got a good start and we'll see how far he goes before he finishes? But I'm very interested to see what he can get for Riley, and more interested if Austin Matthews doesn't want to sign or decides he wants to wait, then the Leafs, I'd love to see what they could get for him. Because what Brady Tkachuk ended up getting, the Ottawa Senators, I would hope and think the Leafs could match that. But I don't know. Teams have 2 first-round picks in the draft this year.
Well, and technically now Ottawa has 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
Because they picked 9th, 25th, and 32nd overall. So that's not bad for them. Their next pick after that is, for this trade at least, is going to be a first round in 2029 and a second round in 2030. I don't know how deep those drafts are going to be, but I know this is a boon for them this year because they're going to be able to get players that will be ready for the NHL very shortly.
And they've got a boatload of decent young players.
Oh yeah, I mean, Ottawa's, like I keep saying, Ottawa's was a very exciting team to watch.
Absolutely, and you know what? As much as you didn't like the idea that Tkachuk left, at least they got a real good. They got a good, real good exchange. They did much better than Calgary did with Matthew Tkachuk.
No, they definitely did, and they're currently sitting on 9 picks in this year's draft.
Wow!
So they're not hurting by any means. The bonus on top of all of this is that Ottawa is now looking at a $25.2 million cap space. They're excuse me. They're currently $2 million over the salary floor and $25 million underneath the salary cap. So they're well situated now to make some very significant steps forward if they want to.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the PWHL and let's talk about the Scepters and the Victoire.
So there have been some signings. The Scepters managed to sign Jamie Lee Rattray, taking her away from the Boston Fleet. She's joining the Scepters after spending 3 seasons there, producing 12 points in 30 games last season. She's returning to the Toronto area after playing 5 seasons in the CWHL with the Brampton and Markham Thunder. The Montreal Victoire also signed forward Jesse Eldridge to a 2-year deal. Eldridge is from Barrie. He's tied for 5th all-time in goals and 7th all-time in points across 84 PWHL games with Boston, Seattle, and New York. Not to be outdone, the Victoire also re-signed Quebec-born forwards Jade Downey-Landry and Alexandra Labelle. Downey-Landry is returning on a 2-year deal, while Labelle is signed through next season. And the Ottawa Charge have signed Derek Grieg to a 2-year contract. Grieg won the Walter Cup with Montreal last year, and her brother plays for the Ottawa Senators. That's Ridley Grieg. Now, not to be outdone, excuse me, PWHL Hamilton also signed Peyton Hemp to a 1-year contract, so they're slowly fleshing out their roster.
Absolutely. Hamilton also did some signing.
Yeah, on top of that signing that we just mentioned, Peyton Hemp, they also signed the day before Alexa Vasco and Kayla Vespa to 2-year contracts for the 27-28 season. These were the first 2 signings for Hamilton as part of the league's open signing period that started on Friday and allows all 12 teams to continue building their roster in advance of the 26-27 campaign. Vasco played the last 2 seasons in Ottawa, and Vespa has played all 3 of her PWHL seasons with the New York Sirens.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the NSL. We normally don't talk about that league. That soccer league is one more Canadian-centric. It is the Canadian League.
Yeah, and it's the women's league, and it's the Ottawa Rapid played to a 1-1 draw versus AFC Toronto, and Montreal tied Calgary 1-1. Delaney Bay Pridham scored in the 3rd minute as the Ottawa Rapid extended their unbeaten streak to 3 games with a 1-1 draw against AFC in Toronto on Sunday. Lauren Rowe evened the score in the 7th minute for Toronto. It was the first draw of the season for the league-leading Rapid, who are 5-2-1. Meanwhile, that single point allowed 5th place Toronto to get within 1 of Vancouver and 2 of Halifax with the game in hand. Evelyn Badu scored the game-time goal in the 29th minute as the Montreal Roses played a 1-1 draw against the Calgary Wild. Callie Johnson put Calgary ahead in the 10th minute. Montreal remained 1 point back of first place Ottawa with its 2nd straight draw. Calgary finally earned just their 2nd point of the season. They're 0-5-2 so far, which is not really a good start for them, but they're getting by.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Jays and Okamoto, the home run machine.
Yeah, he hit a 3-run home run to cap a 5-run 8th inning as the Toronto Blue Jays rallied from a 5-run deficit to beat the Chicago Cubs 8-6 on Saturday. Varsho returned from the 10-day IL and added a 3-run shot as Toronto won for the 4th time in 5 games. Matt Shaw and Pete Crow Armstrong homered for the Cubs, who basically wasted a 5-0 lead in the late innings and missed a chance to win their 3rd in a row. But, as it is, the next 3-game series concluded yesterday with Dylan Cease facing Shota Imanaga.
Excellent. The Jays are doing well, and they also traded for an infielder. I guess they're going to use him as a backup infielder.
Yeah, the thinking was they were going to pick up Luis Arias. He had a 361 average and a 939 OPS so far this season. When the Jays picked him up, he did actually decide to exercise his upward movement clause. What that means is he's going to be in the lineup right away, skipping Buffalo entirely. The Blue Jays designated Pinyango for assignment, so he's going to be coming directly up here. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. I know that a 361 average in the minors doesn't necessarily equate to big league hitting, but he's certainly an option for them to be used against left-handed pitching.
Well, I'm sure he has numbers that support the desire the Blue Jays want. want to get from him, right? All right, let's go to the CFL and we'll talk about the Toronto Argonauts and another game for Chad Kelly. 4 TDs and 4 interceptions.
Yeah, that was not pretty. I think is the best way to put it. I mean, sure, they won 44-24. He finished the game 25 for 32 for 424 yards, but it's the interceptions that I think are the problem. Granted, he did miss the entire 2025 season after suffering a fractured tibia and fibula in the 2024 East Finals. But man, I mean, he has thrown for 400 yards in his first 2 starts of the season. But he's got to clean up the pass selection and the route selection, because that was not a very good look. Then again, he was playing against Dinwiddie, and his old coach, so he's very familiar with the Argo systems and the plays that they run. So I can see why there were 4 interceptions there.
Yeah, and he definitely had his pocket picked a few times there. Let's talk about the Riders. The Grey Cup champs continue to be undefeated, this time by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, the Roughies outlasted the Stamps 40-37. It was really the short yardage guys that stole the show. Tommy Stevens piled into the end zone in OT for his second touchdown of the game to seal the win. But the defenses actually stole the show early, as there were 5 straight punts after Alex Hale opened the scoring with a 27-yard field goal on the first drive of the game. Wind didn't help. A.J. Ouellette had 12 and 13-yard runs, with Samuel Emilus hauling in a 38-yard reception. That was at the end of the first quarter. Now, the Green and White didn't waste any time regaining the 2-possession lead as they strung together a 4-play, 74-yard scoring drive. Trevor Harris, not looking any bit of his age, launched one against the wind to Kean Schaefer-Baker, who did the rest by running 36 yards after the catch for a 53-yard touchdown score. But man, I tell you, they traded off field goals in the first overtime frame. Just a fun game to watch.
Speaking of fun, Mitchell of the Hamilton Tiger Cats was having a lot of fun against his opponent.
Yeah, it was Bo Levi Mitchell versus the world. He started with a pair of 56-yard completions to Keandre Smith and Myron Mitchell. And then, it didn't end there. Hamilton extended their lead in the second quarter as Mitchell pinned one to Maximilian Mang for his second career touchdown on his 4th career catch. Now, the Lions did have the ball for the majority of the first half, but they couldn't match Hamilton in the red zone. All 3 opening drives reached scoring position, but each stalled for field goals. So it's something that they're going to need to work on there.
The Habs may have a goalie in the Hall.
I can confirm that he was actually inducted into the Hall earlier this afternoon. He was part of the crop that was announced, along with Keith Tkachuk, who will play into one of our stories a little further down the line.
And we talked a little bit about Sens trading Brady Tkachuk. Anything else to add?
Magic beans. Essentially, the Sens traded Brady Tkachuk to the Panthers for magic beans, but it is 3 first-round picks. Now, allegedly, Tkachuk actually asked for a trade out of Montreal 10 days after losing to the Carolina Hurricanes, which coincidentally, I think, coincides with his appearance on his brother's podcast and with his father, Keith Tkachuk, trash-talking his own teammates. Now, I'm not sure if the league would want to look into that sort of thing for tampering, but it could explain why there were 3 first-round draft picks exchanged for him.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Leafs would have got nothing if there wasn't anything to the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights tampered in getting Marner. So another American player leaving a Canadian team, maybe Hellebuck, Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, and the price tag for him isn't going to be cheap. According to Darren Dreger, the Jets would be targeting a second-line center as the centerpiece of any package, along with other notable assets like a defenseman or a middle 6 forward. Now, the logic behind such a move is not without merit. That could allow the Jets to deepen their roster in areas that have at times been a little bit thin, adding impactful pieces up front while finding a goaltending solution elsewhere at a fraction of Hellebuck's cap hit. The rumor again is that Hellebuck has indicated that he would like to go to an American team, specifically Vegas, Dallas, or Florida. So it's highly likely that he could potentially end up with his other Team USA gold medal winning teammates there. But yeah, as it currently stands, there's going to be a big return for him. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. Florida has already given up a lot. So to get Hellebuck, I don't know what else they've got that they can give. So that's the $1 million question as far as moving to Florida is concerned. Well, those are great choices for them as far as making a trade with a limited group of teams that are competing for it doesn't help. And doing it the way they did with Tkachuk, where there was no talk, it was quiet, and then it just happened. Now there's more conversations with Hellebuck, makes it harder for a team to get as much as they might be able to get, I think. But that's just me. Let's talk about the Flames and the draft and how it could affect their future.
So as it currently stands, Calgary actually has 11 picks, including 2 first-round selections and 6 picks inside the top 55. Now, obviously, that kind of draft capital doesn't guarantee that you're going to find, a fistful of diamonds in a coal mine, but it does give a rebuilding team something kind of necessary, and that's flexibility. As it currently stands, they're due to pick 6th overall and 30th overall. That's a pick that they got from Vegas. They're going to be picking 35th, 36th, 51st, and 55th overall. In the 3rd round, they're picking 65th and 68th. And in the 4th round, they're picking 100th. In round 5, they're picking 132nd. And in round 6, they're picking 164th. Now, it's not just the number of picks that they have, but the fact that there's sequentials in there, or close to sequentials, specifically in the 2nd round, when they're looking at 35 and 36 and 51 and 55. If they have certain players that they're targeting, and they also want to try to take advantage of getting another player to complement that one, that certainly makes it easy for them, which also means that they could greatly accelerate their rebuild.
Well, the kind of players they get will matter as far as whether you're rebuilding or whether you're building. You need draft picks regardless. So it really doesn't matter. The Oilers, let's talk about the question about coaching with them and how it impacts on them.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the new coach bump. Vegas certainly experienced that after bringing in Tortorella for the last 8 games of the season and carrying them through to the finals. But the Oilers will now have 21 coaching changes. Due to Glenn Sather's 3 separate stints behind the bench. Of those 21 coaching tenures, 10 lasted 1 year or less. Kevin Lowe lasted a year. Craig McTavish lasted 9. Pat Quinn and Tom Rennie lasted 3 years. Todd McClellan lasted 3. Ken Hitchcock and Dave Tippett were in between 2018 and 2022. Jay Woodcroft lasted 1 year, 2022 to 2023. Chris Knobloch lasted 3 years, 2023 to 2026. And now, bringing in Babcock as they're rumored to be, you can't help but wonder, even despite all of their success in the playoffs, if it's adversely affecting the players and their ability to get further. I mean, it certainly didn't help this year.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the draft when it comes to the Canucks. We're talking very loudly, it seems, without hesitation, about picking the player whose father is the new coach.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a father-son connection. It's not like it hasn't happened before. We've seen that in Winnipeg with Lowry and Lowry. But David Pagnotta of the 4th period said, I'm not expecting the Canucks to select Caleb Malhotra. It's not just it wouldn't be a case of nepotism because Caleb can actually play. He basically morphed into a top offensive product for Brantford down the stretch and into the OHL's playoffs. He's 6'2". He can skate. He's a conscientious, physically assertive two-way center, and his production down the stretch has been drawing comparisons to Jonathan Toews. which is interesting. But he'll be chosen early. He'll have a choice to make after that, though, because he's committed to play college at Boston University. So, you may not have access to him for the first year or so because he may be finishing out his college career. And that certainly puts the Canucks in an interesting position because based on the trades that they've been doing, they need players now more than anything else.
If you're picking in front of Vancouver and they want this kid, you might be able to get something and more than you'd expect, because if you're not interested in him and you were going to pick somebody else and you give them that pick, they're going to pick him and you're going to still get to pick your guy and get whatever it is you can get to have Vancouver take your draft position. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a very interesting situation for Vancouver, and the draft itself is going to be interesting. I'm still not sold for sure who the Leafs will pick, but again, is it another core 4 guy or do you want a Barkov guy? That's what it comes down to for me.
No, 100%. I can see exactly where you're coming from on that, and based on the success that Toronto's had in the past with core groups, I'm not sure if they necessarily want to go down that road again. I'm just putting it out there.
I would, again, I'm going to keep saying this until it happens or doesn't happen. If the Leafs could work out a trade for Matthews with San Jose or another team that might want him and be able to exchange draft picks and maybe get a few more, get a little bit of a laundry basket full of, players for him, and then get Stenberg and McKenna. That would be a great way to go for the Leafs. Yes, and Leaf fans, it's true. The team would not be as good. Maybe. We don't know, what McKenna and if Stenberg joins, what they could mean to this team. I really think I'd like to find out. This team needs a fresh start, but they definitely need a commitment from Matthews, sign or be traded, make the decision. They've got to show some chutzpah. They got to show some cojones, as they say in Mexico.
It wouldn't be out of place. I would love to see Chaika make a move like that. I think it would definitely shake things up here and perhaps even give the fans a little more hope.
And if and when they make the playoffs, the old failures don't rear their ugly head. Only as much as Nylander would raise. Only as much as he would raise. Aaron, thanks for doing this, buddy. We'll see you again.
Thanks, Frank.
All right, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Snishi. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.